Hey folks, welcome back to Legacy of Old Age. What if the little things you've been brushing off, a lingering cough, a sudden drop in weight, or a pain that won't quit were trying to tell you something serious? For us old-timers, those signs might be more than just the creaks of age. They could be whispers of cancer, waiting to be heard. Seniors with these signs, could they have cancer? Today, we're diving into a topic that's as heavy as a winter quilt, but just as important to unwrap, with stories that'll make you sit up, take notice, and maybe even save a life. Stick with me, because I've got tales that'll tug at your heart, open your eyes, and give you a few tricks from the old days with a modern twist to keep us healthy for years to come. In the miles ahead, you'll hear about a weary widow who ignored the signs and nearly paid the price, a proud farmer who waited too long to listen, a spunky gal whose family stepped in just in time, and a straight talk from my own pop that made me see it all in a new light. So grab a cup of coffee or whatever you sipped back when the doc's visits were few and far between, and settle in, folks. This road's got some turns worth taking. It all started a few years back when I paid a visit to Mrs. Clara up in Kentucky. She lived in a little cabin tucked in the holler, the kind of place where the air smells of pine and the creek sings you to sleep at night. Clara was 89, thin as a fence post, with a smile that'd light up the darkest day. She'd been a seamstress her whole life, stitching dresses for half the county, and she'd raised 6 kids on her own after her husband passed in '62. I'd known her since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. She'd made my first Sunday suit, a little blue number I wore till the seams gave out. I stopped by with a basket of apples from my orchard, figuring she'd whip up one of her famous pies. But when I got there, I found her sitting on her porch, rocking in a chair older than me, her bony hands folded in her lap. "Clara," I said, setting the basket down, "you're looking a bit pale. You feeling all right?" She chuckled, a sound like wind chimes on a breezy day, but it turned into a cough that wouldn't quit, a dry, hacking sound that made my stomach twist. "Oh, it's nothing," she said, waving a hand. "Just a tickle in my throat, been there a few months. And I've been tired, lost a few pounds, but that's just age, ain't it?" I sat down, the smell of apples mixing with the pine in the air, and felt a chill run down my spine. Those weren't just signs of age, and I knew it. I'd been reading up on cancer in seniors, folks, and Clara's words rang every alarm bell in my head. That cough, the weight loss, the fatigue, they were all red flags, the kind you don't ignore at her age. "Clara," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you need to see a doc. That don't sound right." She brushed me off, saying she didn't want to bother the doctor with old lady troubles, but I wasn't taking no for an answer. I called her daughter Mary right then and there, and we got Clara to the clinic the next day. The doc ordered a chest X-ray, and sure enough, they found a shadow on her lung, early-stage lung cancer. Clara was lucky they caught it in time, and after some treatment, she's still with us, baking pies and smiling brighter than ever. But it was a close call, folks, one that could have gone the other way if she'd kept ignoring those signs. Ever known someone who brushed off a sign that turned out to be serious, folks? Or maybe you've had a scare yourself. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. That day with Clara got me thinking about how easy it is for us old-timers to chalk things up to age, when there might be something more. I started digging, and the docs say catching cancer early can make all the different signs, like a cough that won't quit, unexplained weight loss, or feeling tired all the time, could be your body's way of waving a red flag. Back in the day, we'd say if the cow's limping, you check her hoof, and now the docs say if you've got these signs for more than a few weeks, Don't wait, get to the doctor and get checked. Clara's close call was just the beginning, and it set me on a path to learn more about the signs we can't ignore. Clara's close call stuck with me like a burr on a wool sock. Folks, that image of her coughing on her porch, brushing off signs that turned out to be cancer, kept playing in my mind like an old record on repeat. It got me wondering how many other old-timers were ignoring the whispers of their bodies, chalking them up to age when they might be something more serious. I'd seen Clara get lucky, but I knew not everyone would, and it wasn't long before I heard about Mr. Hank down in Georgia, a proud man who waited too long to listen, teaching me a lesson about the cost of delay that I'll never forget. Hank lived on a small farm just outside Macon, the kind of place where the air smells of hay and honeysuckle, and the fields stretch out like a patchwork quilt under the summer sun. He was 76, built like a barn door, even after all those years, with a laugh that'd shake the leaves off a tree. Hank had been a farmer his whole life, raised hogs, grew peanuts, and could fix a tractor blindfolded with nothing but a wrench and a prayer. He was a regular at the local diner, always at the counter with a cup of black coffee, swapping stories with the other old-timers about the good old days. But that spring, when I stopped by his place to drop off a sack of pecans I'd picked up for him, he loved them in his pies, I found him sitting alone in his kitchen, staring at the table with a look of regret I'd never seen before. "Hank," I said, setting the pecans down on the counter, "you look like you've lost your best hog. What's wrong?" The air smelled of coffee and linseed oil, and his old hound, Rusty, was snoring in the corner like a freight train. He didn't look at me, just kept his eyes on the table, and said, "I waited too long." I pulled up a chair, the wood creaking under me, and waited. Hank wasn't one to open up easy, but I could tell something heavy was weighing on him. Finally, he sighed, heavy as a sack of feed, and said, "Been feeling off for months, tired all the time, dropping weight like a stone, no appetite. Thought it was just age, maybe the heat. But it kept getting worse, and I finally went to the doc last week. They found colon cancer, stage 3. If I'd gone sooner, they might have caught it early." I sat there, folks, feeling my stomach drop like a rock in a well. Hank told me how it started nearly a year back. He'd been more tired than usual, barely able to get through his chores without sitting down to rest. He'd lost nearly 20 pounds without trying, his jeans hanging loose on his hips, and his appetite had vanished. Even his favorite pecan pie didn't tempt him. "I kept telling myself it was nothing," he said, his voice low. "I didn't want to bother the doc with old man complaints. But now I'm looking at surgery, maybe chemo, and a fight I might not win." I looked at Hank, his big hands trembling as he gripped his coffee mug, and saw the fear in his eyes, the kind that comes when you realize you might have missed your chance. Ever known someone who waited too long to get checked, folks? Or maybe you felt those signs yourself and brushed them off. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. That day with Hank broke my heart, but it lit a fire in me to learn more about the signs we can't ignore, and why acting fast can make all the difference. I started digging, and the docs say those signs Hank had: feeling tired all the time, losing weight without trying, and no appetite are some of the biggest red flags for cancer in seniors. They call them systemic symptoms, and they can point to cancers like colon, stomach, or even pancreatic cancer, especially if they stick around for weeks or months. But there's a trick from the old days with a modern spin to help us through. Back when I was a kid, we'd say if the cow's off her feed, you call the vet, and now the docs say if you're feeling tired, losing weight, or not hungry for more than a few weeks, don't wait, get to the doctor and ask for a checkup. They might order blood tests, a scan, or even a colonoscopy, depending on what's going on. But catching it early can mean a world of difference, a better chance at treatment, a better chance at more years. Hank's story wasn't the end of what I'd learned, and it got me wondering how others found their way when the signs started whispering. Hank's story left a heavy weight on my chest, folks like a sack of feed I couldn't put down. His regret over waiting too long to get checked kept echoing in my mind. It got me wondering how others found their way when the signs started whispering, those quiet warnings that could mean cancer if we don't listen. I'd seen Clara get lucky with an early catch, watched Hank face the cost of delay, and I couldn't help but hope there was a brighter side to this tale, a story of someone who heard the whispers in time. That's when I heard about Miss Betty, a spunky gal from Alabama whose family stepped in just when she needed them most, showing me the power of love and a timely checkup. Miss Betty lived in a tidy little bungalow on the edge of Montgomery, the kind of place where the front yard's always blooming with azaleas and the mailboxes painted with sunflowers she did herself. She was 74, with a laugh like a wind chime and a knack for knitting scarves so soft you'd swear they were made of clouds. Betty was a firecracker. She'd been a nurse during the Korean War, raised 4 boys on her own, and could still outdance anyone at the church social, even with her bad hip. I'd known her for years, always seeing her at the county fair with her famous lemon squares, the kind that'd make your mouth pucker and your heart sing. But that fall, when I stopped by her booth to pick up a square, I could tell something was off. Her usual sparkle was dim, like a lantern running low on oil. "Betty," I said, brushing crumbs off my shirt, "you don't seem yourself. You feeling all right?" She sighed, heavy as a sack of feed, and motioned me to sit on a bench nearby, the air thick with the smell of cotton candy and hay. "I've been hurting," she said, her voice trembling. "Got this pain in my side that won't quit, been coughing for weeks, and I'm so tired I can barely get out of bed some days." I thought it was just my age, maybe a cold, but it's not going away. I looked at Betty, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her apron, and felt a chill run down my spine. Those signs were all too familiar. The kind I'd read about after Clara's scare. Pain that won't quit, a cough that lingers, and fatigue that drags you down. They could be red flags for cancer, and I wasn't about to let Betty brush them off. I didn't have to push too hard. Folks Betty's family had already noticed the change in her. Her youngest son, Jimmy, had been watching her closely, seeing how she winced when she moved, how her cough kept her up at night. "Mama," he told her one evening, sitting at her kitchen table with a plate of her lemon squares between them, "you're not right, and we ain't waiting to find out why." Jimmy and his wife took her to the doctor the next day, and Betty's daughter, Sarah, drove down from Birmingham to be there too. The doc ordered a full work of blood tests, a chest X-ray, even a CT scan, and they found it. A small tumor in her lung, early-stage lung cancer, just like Clara's, but caught even sooner. Betty started treatment right away, a little surgery, some radiation, and last I heard, she's back to dancing at the church social, her sparkle brighter than ever. Folks, my heart swelled like a balloon. Betty's family had done what she couldn't do alone, listening to the whispers of her body and acting fast to save her life. They'd shown her that those signs weren't just old lady troubles, and their love had given her a fighting chance. Ever had a family member step in when you needed them most, folks? Or maybe you've been the one to push a loved one to get checked. Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. That day with Betty taught me a trick from the old days with a modern spin. Back when I was a kid, we'd say family knows when the cow's off her feed. And now I say, don't be afraid to lean on your loved ones. Let 'em push you to the dock. Let them be there for the results, because they might just see what you can't. For the signs themselves, the docs say Betty's were classic red flags, a pain that won't go away, a cough that lingers for weeks, and feeling tired all the time can point to cancers like lung, ovarian, or even lymphoma, especially if they come with other things like night sweats or a fever. They say if you've got these signs for more than a few weeks, don't wait, get to the doctor and ask for a checkup, maybe even a scan if they think it's needed. Catching it early, like Betty did, can mean a world of difference, a better chance at treatment, a better chance at more years. Betty's family didn't just save her, they showed me the power of listening, and her story got me wondering what the docs had to say about why these signs show up in the first place. Betty's story lifted my spirits like a sunny day after a long rain. Folks seeing her sparkle come back thanks to her family's quick action showed me that listening to the whispers of our bodies can make all the difference. But it got me wondering what the docs had to say about why these signs show up in the first place, and how we can tell if they're just the creaks of age or something more serious. I'd seen Clara get lucky, felt Hank's regret, and watched Betty's family step in just in time, but I still didn't have the full picture, the kind of straight talk that'd help us old-timers know what to look for. That's when I turned to my own pop, a man who'd been wrestling with his own worries about some troubling signs, and a visit to his doctor that finally gave me the clarity I'd been chasing. Pop lived in that same little house outside Springfield, Missouri, where the blackberry bushes still grew wild and the porch creaked under every step. He was 83, with a voice that growled like an old diesel engine and a laugh that'd make you forget your troubles. Pop had always been a big man, round as a barrel, with a belly that had earned him the nickname Big Hank down at the diner, but he'd never been one to fuss about his health. That is, until a few months back, when I found him on the porch one evening, rocking in his chair with a mug of coffee in hand, the air smelling of wood smoke and the last of the summer flowers. "I'm not right," he said, his brow furrowed deeper than a plowed field. "Been having this pain in my gut, and I'm so tired I can barely get through the day. And I've been coughing up a storm, even coughed up a little blood the other day. I'm scared, son." I sat there, folks, feeling a chill run down my spine. Pop had never been one to admit he was scared, and those signs were all too familiar after what I'd learned from Clara, Hank, and Betty. Pain in the gut, fatigue, a cough with blood, they were red flags for cancer, the kind you don't ignore at his age. "Pop," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "we're going to the doc, no arguments." He grumbled, but I wasn't taking no for an answer. We got him an appointment with Doc Evans, our family sawbones in Tulsa, the next day, and I went along, figuring I'd get the straight dope from someone who'd seen it all. Doc's office was a cozy little place, with a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and old magazines, and a desk piled high with papers. Doc himself was a weary fella, 65, with a mustache that'd make a walrus jealous, and a laugh that'd put you at ease. When we sat down in his exam room, I got right to the point. "Doc," I said, "Pop's been having pain in his gut. He's tired all the time, and he's coughing up blood. Could this be cancer?" Doc leaned back in his chair, stroking that mustache, and gave me a look that said he'd heard this question 1,000 times. "It could be," he said, his voice steady as a preacher's. "Those are serious signs, especially at his age." He turned to Pop, asking him more about the pain, a dull ache in his lower belly that had been there for months, and the cough, which had started dry but turned bloody in the last few weeks. Doc ordered a full workup, blood tests, a chest X-ray, a CT scan of his belly, and while we waited for the results, he broke it down for us. "These signs can point to cancer," he said, But they can also be other things: infections, ulcers, even just age. Pain in the gut can mean colon or stomach cancer, especially with fatigue. Coughing up blood can point to lung cancer, or even throat cancer if there's hoarseness. But we won't know till we look. A week later, the results came back, folks, and I'll never forget the look on Pop's face when Doc called us in. It wasn't cancer, thank the stars, but a bleeding ulcer in his stomach, likely from years of taking pain pills for his arthritis, and a touch of pneumonia that had caused the cough. Pop started treatment right away: antibiotics for the pneumonia, meds for the ulcer, and last I checked, he's back to his old self, grumbling about the hogs and sipping his coffee on the porch. But it was a close call, folks, one that could have gone the other way if we'd waited any longer. Doc's words stuck with me, and I started digging deeper into what the science says. The docs say those signs: pain that won't quit, coughing up blood, and feeling tired all the time, can point to cancers like stomach, lung, or even blood cancers like leukemia, especially if they come with things like night sweats, fever, or lumps you can feel. Ever had a scare that turned out to be nothing, folks? Or maybe you've seen these signs in someone you love? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. That day with Doc taught me a trick from the old days with a modern spin. Back when I was a kid, we'd say if the tractor's smoking, you don't keep plowing. And now the docs say if you've got pain, a bloody cough, or fatigue that won't quit for more than a few weeks, don't wait. Get to the doctor and ask for tests, maybe even a scan if they think it's needed. Pop's relief wasn't the end of what I'd learned, and it got me thinking about how we can all take steps to catch these whispers before they turn into a storm. Doc's straight talk in that exam room was like a lantern in the dark. Folks, it lit up the path and showed me what those whispers in our bodies really mean for us old-timers. I'd seen Clara nearly miss her chance, felt Hank's regret for waiting too long, watched Betty's family step in to save her, and sat with Pop as he faced his own fears, only to find relief in a diagnosis that wasn't cancer. Each story added a piece to the puzzle, and by the time I walked out of Doc's office, the sun dipping low over Tulsa, I knew the truth: seniors with these signs, they could have cancer, but if we catch those whispers early, we can turn them into a shout for help, and maybe even a second chance at more years. Let's roll it back and look at the road we've traveled, folks. There's Clara, thin as a fence post, coughing on her Kentucky porch at 89, brushing off signs that turned out to be early-stage lung cancer. I can still hear that dry, hacking cough, the way she waved it off as just a tickle, until we got her to the doc and caught it in time. Then Hank, out by his Georgia barn, his big hands trembling as he told me he'd waited too long, tired, losing weight, no appetite, signs that led to stage 3 colon cancer. I'll never forget the regret in his eyes, the way he stared at the fields like they held all the answers he'd missed. Miss Betty, spunky as ever, finding her way back to the county fair in Alabama, her sparkle renewed by her family's love, their quick action catching her lung cancer early. I can still hear her laugh, bright as a wind chime, as she danced at the church social again. And Pop, my own big Hank, sitting on his Springfield porch with a coffee in hand, scared of a bloody cough and gut pain that turned out to be an ulcer and pneumonia, not cancer. Thank the stars. I can still see his grin as he said, "Guess I'll keep my coffee," a weight lifting off his shoulders. They're all different, ain't they? Clara's a weary widow with a garden full of greens. Hank's a farmer who'd rather talk to his hogs than a doc. Betty's a firecracker who'd dance circles around us all. And Pop's a stubborn old cuss who'd rather eat pie than worry about his health. But they've all taught me one thing: those signs we brush off as just age, can be whispers of cancer, and listening to them can mean the difference between a fighting chance and a fight we might not win. I got to thinking if they can face these signs, so can we, and I'll be darned if I don't share what I've learned to help every old-timer out there catch those whispers before they turn into a storm. So let's round up some tricks from the old days with a modern twist to keep us healthy, folks. First off, don't ignore the whispers. Back when I was a kid, we'd say if the cow's limping, you check her hoof. And now the docs say if you've got signs like a cough that won't quit, pain that lingers, feeling tired all the time, losing weight without trying, or coughing up blood for more than a few weeks, don't wait, get to the doctor and ask for a checkup. They might order blood tests, a scan, or even a colonoscopy, but catching it early can mean a better chance at treatment, a better chance at more years. The docs say early detection can turn a tough fight into a winnable one, like Clara and Betty, who got their second chance because they listened. Second, keep your body strong to fight off trouble. Hank and Pop showed me how easy it is to let things slide, but there's ways to stay ahead. Back in the day, we'd say a good meal keeps the doctor away, and now the docs say eat a balanced plate, a little protein like eggs or beans to keep your muscles strong, a little greens like spinach or collards to keep your blood clean, and a little fruit like berries to keep your immune system up. They say smoking and drinking too much can raise your risk for cancers like lung and liver. So if you can, cut back, maybe swap that cigarette for a walk around the farm, or that whiskey for a glass of water. And move a little every day. 30 minutes of walking, gardening, or even dancing like Betty can keep your heart pumping and your body ready for whatever comes. And here's the best trick of all. Folks, don't go it alone. Betty's family showed me the power of love, and Clara's daughter proved it too. Back when I was young, we'd say family sticks closer than stink on a skunk. And now I say, lean on your loved ones. Let em know if you're feeling off. Let em push you to the doc. Let em be there for the results. And if you're worried, get checked every year. A simple blood test or a doc's visit can catch trouble before it grows, like a weed you pull before it takes over the garden. The docs say regular checkups can spot cancer early, when it's easiest to treat. So don't wait for the signs to shout, listen for the whispers. What's your trick for staying healthy, folks? Ever had a scare that made you listen closer to your body? Drop it in the comments. Your stories are the gold here, and they might just save someone else. Hit that like button if these tales hit home. Smash subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss what's next. There's more wisdom waiting just around the bend. Share this with a friend who'd get a kick out of it. Let's keep the conversation going and keep our years golden. I've got more stories to share, so stick with me. We're not done yet.